Ethan had scoured the entire farm, checked every nook and cranny of the barn, even crawled under his truck, wondering if the little troublemaker had decided to nap in the shade. But deep down, Ethan knew this wasn't some accident. Someone had taken him. And then, as if on cue, Mr. Carter, his ever-watchful, overly curious neighbor, showed up by the fence, chewing on a toothpick like he had all the wisdom in the world. "Saw your fancy little goat this morning," he said, casually. Rebecca had been carrying him like he was a sack of potatoes. She looked way too pleased with herself, too. Ethan's stomach sank. Rebecca. Of course, it was Rebecca. His neighbor, his arch-nemesis, the self-styled queen of the cul-de-sac. The woman who once called the cops because his rooster was too loud in the morning. The woman who tried to get rid of his unsightly farm because she thought it was hurting property values. The woman who stole his baby goat. Now, Ethan peered over the ridiculously tall fence separating his place from Rebecca's, and his worst fears came true. There, right next to her ridiculous outdoor kitchen, tied to a metal post like some kind of farmyard decoration, was Buttercup. The little goat looked confused but unharmed, letting out the occasional nervous bleat. And just a few feet away, Rebecca and her snobby guests were clinking wine glasses, laughing up as a chef in a comically large white hat flipped something on the grill. Ethan's heart raced. He had to get Buttercup out of there, now. He gripped the top of the fence, ready to climb over, when a sharp voice cut through the air. Well, if it isn't Farmer Ethan. Rebecca stood there with a smug grin plastered on her perfectly lipstick face, holding a glass of wine in one hand, the other on her hip, like she had just won some neighborhood battle. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Ethan clenched his fists, trying hard to keep his cool. "Give me back my goat, Rebecca." She let out a laugh, the kind that made Ethan's blood boil. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. I found him wandering by the road and thought I'd save him before something happened to him." "That's funny," Ethan shot back, "because my fence is still locked and my cameras didn't pick up any wandering." Rebecca waved him off like it was no big deal. "Technicalities. Anyway, you should be grateful. We're throwing a lovely little barbecue, and I thought he'd make a great addition." Ethan's stomach flipped. "You mean?" "Oh, don't look so shocked," she said, rolling her eyes. "People eat goat all the time. It's a delicacy." Buttercup let out another nervous bleat, as if he understood exactly what she meant. Ethan felt his pulse thudding in his ears. He was about to lose it. The urge to grab that wine glass and dump it over her head was overwhelming. But no, that wouldn't do. He needed a better plan. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to stay calm, even though every muscle in his body was screaming to act. "All right, Rebecca. Let's be reasonable. That goat is mine. You can't just steal him." "Oh, please," she interrupted, taking a slow sip of wine. "It's just a goat." Ethan's vision went red with rage. Just a goat. Just a goat? He had raised Buttercup from the moment he was born. He had stayed up all night during a storm when the little guy got sick. He built Buttercup his own play structure with ramps and a tiny slide. This wasn't just a goat. This was family. Rebecca smirked. "Look, you're welcome to stay. We've got plenty of food. You might even enjoy it." Ethan inhaled sharply, forcing himself to think. Charging in and snatching Buttercup wasn't an option. Rebecca would call the cops in a heartbeat and somehow flip the script to make herself the victim. No, he needed a smarter move. Then, like a blessing from the heavens, Ethan spotted something in the corner of Rebecca's backyard, an obnoxiously decorative sign on a table with a QR code. "Follow my exclusive barbecue experience on social media." Ethan's mind started racing. Rebecca loved attention. She lived for it. If he played this right, he could turn this whole thing around. He stepped back, forcing a sly grin onto his face. "You know what, Rebecca? Maybe you're right." Her eyes narrowed, suspicious. "Oh, yeah," Ethan said, crossing his arms. "I mean, if this is such a high-class event, I should be honored that my goat's the star of the show. I bet your online followers would love to see this." Rebecca's smirk grew wider. "Obviously, I have some very important people watching." That was it. Perfect. "Well then," Ethan said, pulling out his phone, "let's make sure everyone sees it." He scanned the QR code, quickly finding her live stream. As expected, She was bragging about her fresh, organic, locally sourced meal. The comments were filled with questions about the food, the setting, the recipes. Ethan didn't waste any time. He snapped a screenshot of Buttercup, still tied up, and posted it in every local group he could find. Breaking. Rebecca from Maple Street stole my baby goat and is about to cook him live on camera. Somebody stop this madness. Then he called two people. The first, a local animal rights group that took issues like this seriously. The second, the cop, because unlike Rebecca, Ethan actually had proof of theft. Rebecca was still blissfully unaware as she gossiped away when Ethan put his phone back in his pocket. "You know," Ethan said, barely hiding his grin, "I think this is going to be your most popular barbecue yet." Rebecca had no idea what was coming. As she leisurely sipped her wine, completely oblivious to the chaos that was about to erupt, Ethan stood by the fence, watching everything unfold like a man who had just set the perfect trap. The live stream was still rolling, and it didn't take long for the comment section to explode. Messages flooded in, some people confused, wondering if this was a prank, while others, passionate animal lovers, were already tagging authorities in their outrage. But Ethan wasn't about to leave anything to chance. He wanted to make sure this disaster hit Rebecca in the most spectacular way possible. That's where Megan and Charlie came into play. Megan, his childhood best friend and a master at causing just the right amount of trouble, was already in motion. She was walking up Rebecca's driveway, carrying a tray of what she called organic artisan lemonade. But Ethan knew full well it was the most foul, sour, undrinkable concoction she could manage. Her job was simple: distract Rebecca long enough for Ethan to slip into the yard. Meanwhile, Charlie, Megan's 12-year-old troublemaker of a brother, was hiding behind a row of bushes, armed with a slingshot and a bag of marshmallows. After all, if anyone was going to defend a goat named Buttercup, it might as well be with literal marshmallows. His task was clear: cause absolute chaos. As soon as Megan rang the doorbell, Ethan quietly slipped through the side gate, keeping low. Rebecca's guests were too busy chatting to notice him. Buttercup was still tied up, looking thoroughly unimpressed with everything going on. Ethan crept closer, whispering, "All right, buddy, let's get you out of here before you end up as someone's dinner." Right on cue, Megan's voice rang out from the front. "Good evening, everyone. Would you care to try some hand-squeezed, ethically sourced, farm-fresh lemonade?" Rebecca, who had been bragging about the exclusivity of her party, turned around, visibly annoyed. "Ugh, are you seriously selling drinks right now?" Megan smiled brightly, totally unfazed. "Oh, absolutely. And let me tell you, it's so exclusive, only the most refined palates will appreciate it." Rebecca, whose entire personality was built around appearing sophisticated, sniffed dismissively. "I suppose I could try a sip." Megan handed her a cup with a sweet smile. The second Rebecca tasted the drink, she made a noise that could only be described as a cat trying to sing opera. She spat it out all over her expensive patio furniture, clutching her throat. "What is this? Are you trying to poison me?" Megan gasped in mock horror. "Oh no, that was my extra bowl batch. You must have a very sensitive palate." As Rebecca gagged and scrambled for a napkin, Charlie seized his opportunity. From his hidden position, he pulled back his slingshot and launched a marshmallow. It soared gracefully through the air, hitting one of Rebecca's guests square in the forehead. The man, mid-sip of his wine, choked in surprise, spilling red liquid all over his white blazer. "What the—" Before he could even react, another marshmallow nailed Rebecca right in the back of the head, sticking to her perfectly styled blonde hair. She shrieked, spinning around in confusion. By the time the third marshmallow flew, total chaos had broken out. Rebecca's guests, now completely rattled, were frantically dodging the barrage of sugary projectiles. In the midst of it all, Megan kept apologizing while cleverly blocking Rebecca's path to the backyard. Ethan saw his chance. He quickly untied Buttercup, scooping the little goat into his arms. "All right, buddy, time to make a run for it." But just as he turned to leave, a voice rang out. "And just where do you think you're going?" Rebecca, somehow breaking free from Megan's distraction, stood there, her face twisted in fury from the lemonade incident and the marshmallow attack. Her eyes locked onto Buttercup, and Ethan could see the realization hit her. "You think you can just waltz in here and take him back?" she snapped. Ethan didn't flinch. "You mean take back the animal you stole from me?" "Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing." Rebecca let out a dramatic scoff. "Oh, please, this is ridiculous. You're making a scene over a stupid farm animal. Do you have any idea how much effort I put into planning this event? The influencers I invited? The reputation I built?" Ethan gave her a slow, unimpressed nod. "Yeah, you sure built yourself an empire here, Rebecca. Too bad it's about to crumble." Before she could even ask what he meant, a distant siren wail cut through the madness. Rebecca's smug expression faltered. She glanced around, trying to figure out if this was just another prank. Then one of her guests, still holding their phone, gasped. Rebecca, your live stream is blowing up." "And not in a good way," Ethan smirked. "Yeah, funny how broadcasting your crimes to the entire town tends to get a reaction." Rebecca lunged toward him, but before she could get anywhere near Buttercup, the front gate swung open. A squad car rolled into the driveway, followed by an animal control van, and, to Rebecca's absolute horror, a small group of very angry protesters holding signs that read "Save the Goat" and "Justice for Buttercup." One of the officers stepped out, looking completely unimpressed. "Rebecca Carter?" Rebecca plastered on her best innocent smile. "Oh, officer, what a lovely surprise. We're just having a little neighborhood gathering. We received multiple reports about a stolen animal and possible animal cruelty." The officer cut her off. He glanced at Ethan, still holding Buttercup. "Sir, is this your goat?" Ethan nodded. "Yep. And I've got proof he was taken from my property." Rebecca let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, come on. He was just wandering around. I was doing him a favor." The officer raised an eyebrow. "We also have video evidence from your own live stream where you openly admit to planning to cook him." Rebecca's face drained of color. The entire backyard went silent, with every single guest awkwardly shifting away from her. Even the fancy chef who had been tending to the grill was now discreetly packing up his knives, wanting no part in the unfolding disaster. "Now," the officer continued, pulling out a notepad, "let's talk about the multiple health violations, unregistered event hosting, and potential theft charges." Rebecca made a strangled noise. "Wait, I didn't." "This is all being blown out of proportion," Ethan said, taking a step closer, savoring every second of her meltdown. "Yeah, I'm sure the internet is going to be real forgiving about this one." As if on cue, Rebecca's phone pinged with notifications. Then another, and another. She fumbled to check it, her eyes growing wide with horror as she saw the flood of comments, the furious messages, and the rapidly spreading hashtag Goatgate. Buttercup let out a triumphant bleat, as if celebrating their victory. Ethan gave him a proud pat. "Don't worry, buddy. You're headed home." And as Rebecca's perfectly crafted, immaculate world crumbled around her, Ethan couldn't help but feel that revenge had never tasted so sweet. Rebecca stood frozen in the middle of her backyard, clutching her phone as though it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Her expression was a strange blend of disbelief, outrage, and fury as she scrolled through the endless wave of comments flooding her livestream. Each new notification seemed to strip away another layer of her carefully constructed public image, revealing her as the villain of the town in real time. What had started as an elegant upscale barbecue had now transformed into a chaotic mess. Sirens wailing, voices raised in anger, and the air thick with tension. Ethan didn't even try to hide his amusement. He stood off to the side, Buttercup nestled safely in his arms, watching the destruction unfold with a smirk. The police were already on the scene, questioning Rebecca and asking about the permits she clearly didn't have, while animal control officers were inspecting Buttercup, taking notes on his condition. Outside the fence, protesters continued chanting slogans, a mix of "Save the Goat" and "Cancel Rebecca." Meanwhile, Rebecca's guests, sensing the disaster, were quickly gathering their things and sneaking away, not wanting to be dragged into the mess. But Rebecca, ever stubborn, wasn't about to give up without a fight. With the same misplaced confidence that had gotten her into this mess, she snapped out of her daze and turned toward the lead officer, hands on her hips, trying to act like she was in control. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. That man, she pointed at Ethan, her finger shaking, trespassed on my property. He crashed my event. He stole that goat from me. Ethan snorted. You mean the goat you took from me in the first place? Rebecca ignored him completely. Officer, do you know who I am? She demanded. I have connections, important ones. Do you really want to ruin this wonderful evening over a misunderstanding? The officer, who clearly wasn't impressed by her theatrics, raised an eyebrow slowly. Ma'am, I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation. He gestured toward the animal control officer standing next to him. We've got enough evidence to charge you with theft, animal cruelty, and several health and safety violations. And that's before we even mention the live stream footage where you flat out admitted to planning to cook a stolen pet. Rebecca's mouth flapped open and closed like a fish gasping for air. That was taken out of context. One of the officers let out a dry chuckle. You mean the video where you literally said, "This is going to be the best fresh farm-to-table meal ever"? That context. Her face turned bright red. I was joking, obviously. No one was actually going to eat the goat. It was all for show, Ethan added with a casual scratch behind Buttercup's ears. Funny, though. I distinctly remember you telling me I should be honored that he was going to be the star of the meal. Rebecca's frustration boiled over. She whipped around to face Ethan, practically snarling. You think you're so clever, don't you? Ethan grinned. Not really. But I don't need to be when you're doing all the work for me. Rebecca let out a sharp breath, trying to compose herself. She glanced around at the remaining guests, looking for some support, but they all seemed suddenly very busy with their phones, avoiding eye contact. Even the chef who had been manning the grill had vanished, probably realizing that his career wasn't worth the trouble of being linked to this mess. One of the officers sighed, pulled out a notepad, and began writing. All right, Rebecca Carter. As of now, we are issuing citations for unlawful animal possession, failure to obtain proper permits for food preparation, and for hosting an unregistered public event. Rebecca stiffened. Citations. For now, the officer continued, but given the overwhelming video evidence, I'd say you'll likely be seeing a judge pretty soon. Rebecca's face flickered with panic, but she didn't back down. I'll fight this. I have lawyers. I have connections. This whole thing is being blown out of proportion. Megan, who had been casually sipping a soda by the fence, chimed in with a grin. Yeah, well, I don't think the internet agrees with you. Rebecca whipped her head toward Megan, her glare burning. What are you talking about? Megan held up her phone. #GoatGate is trending. You're already at 20,000 views. Oh, and someone turned your meltdown into a meme. Megan turned her phone toward Rebecca, showing a screenshot of her yelling, "It's just a goat," with the caption, "When you try to barbecue the wrong pet." Ethan couldn't help it. He laughed. Rebecca's face turned crimson with fury. This isn't over. Ethan gave her a slow, almost sympathetic smile. Oh, Rebecca, it really is. To prove his point, the officers handed Rebecca a folder full of citations before turning to leave. The animal control officers, satisfied that Buttercup was unharmed, gave Ethan a nod of approval before packing up and heading out as well. The protesters, now that they had succeeded in their mission, began taking victory selfies by Rebecca's gate, celebrating their small, yet mighty triumph. Rebecca stood there frozen, surrounded by the aftermath of what was supposed to be her perfect event. The once pristine white tablecloths were stained with spilled wine, marshmallows lay scattered across the ground like sugary landmines, and her carefully constructed social status was crumbling faster than the fire still smoldering in her abandoned grill. Ethan adjusted Buttercup in his arms and gave Rebecca one last, casual nod. Good luck cleaning this up. With that, he turned and walked toward the gate, Megan and Charlie following. Charlie tossed one last marshmallow over his shoulder, almost like a parting shot. As soon as they crossed back onto Ethan's property, Megan let out a cheer. That was beautiful. Honestly, better than I imagined. Ethan exhaled, finally feeling the tension leave his shoulders. He set Buttercup down, and the little goat bounced around happily, blissfully unaware of how close he had come to disaster. Megan nudged him. So, how does it feel to completely ruin Rebecca's social life in one night? Ethan scratched his chin thoughtfully. I think I could get used to this whole hero thing. Charlie grinned. Buttercup's the real hero. We should get him his own Instagram. Ethan smirked. You know what? That's actually not a bad idea. Megan laughed. Oh, she's going to lose her mind if your goat ends up more famous than she is. Ethan glanced back at Rebecca's yard, where she stood motionless, still staring at her phone as the full weight of her downfall sank in. Yeah, he said with a satisfied nod. I think that's a risk I'm willing to take. Buttercup let out one last triumphant bleat, and with that, Ethan led his little crew back toward the barn, leaving Rebecca to clean up the wreckage of her disastrous evening. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like.